È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'iter communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'iter communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'iter communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'iter communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'Iter Communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'Iter Communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
che si impegna, che si batte,
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito, del presente. E tutto questo esiste anche grazie a te.
Grazie.
Thanks for being here, so many, to open together the 46th edition of the Meeting for Friendship Among Peoples. Welcome. We decided to start this meeting edition talking about peace and bringing a new light, sharing testimonies of life for everybody. Well, we could make many analyses on the evil that is somehow spreading in the world, or on the uncertainties of our future. But all that analysis would not be useful to take initiative for a new beginning, to start something new where everything seems to come to an end. So this year's meeting title is "In the Vacant Places We Will Build with New Bricks." So it says clearly that vacant places exist, but these vacant places are places where it is possible to grow things, it is possible to build things, instead where it is possible to build things together. This meeting wants really to bring testimony in spite of the resignation. We want to show that it's possible to bring hope in the vacant places of indifference, abandonment. It is possible to bring friendship where loneliness rives, and also bring reconciliation in the vacant places of war. We want to bring testimony in spite of the reluctance about the hope in the possibility of being present and together in schools, in families. It is possible to share together the destiny of each and every man with an authentic and genuine interest, trying to work for common good and trying to politically engage and commit in the long term. These are just some of the new bricks that we want to use. Well, these bricks are not completely new because they have always existed, but they become new when they happen again. The good and the truth, the beauty are always surprising things, are always something new when we are experiencing them. So we are going to think over the origins during this meeting edition that let us build things in a new and original way with no pretentiousness and with no arrogance. We're deeply grateful for the fact that this desire to be fully involved by people that can share their testimonies has been welcomed by Pope Leo XIV with a message that he sent us and that I'm now going to read. The message addressed to His Most Reverend Excellency Bishop Nicolas Anselming of Rimini is the following. The theme of the 46th Meeting for Friendship Among Peoples is an invitation to hope. In the vacant places we will build with new bricks. So Leo XIV desires to send his greetings to all the people joining the meeting with the invitation to recognize that the stone, the cornerstone, chosen impression, and who believes in him will not put to shame. So it is a hope that won't disappoint, and hope never disappoints. Vacant places are generally places that are rejected and considered unsuitable for life, and yet there where it seems that nothing can be born, the sacred scripture continually returns to narrate God's passages. First of all, His people are born in the desert. Indeed, it is only on their journey through its harshness that the choice of freedom matures. The biblical God, who observes and listens, knows the sufferings of His children and comes down to free them, transforms the desert into a place of love and decisions, makes it flourish like a garden of hope. The prophets recall it as the scene for a betrothal to return to every time the heart grows lukewarm, to restart from God's faithfulness. Monks and nuns for millennia have dwelled in the desert on behalf of all of us, representing all of humanity, with the Lord of silence and of life. The Holy Father has appreciated that one of the exhibitions characterizing this year's meeting is dedicated to the witness of the martyrs of Algeria. In them, the Church's vocation to dwell in the desert in deep communion with all humanity overcoming the walls of indifference that set religions and cultures against one another, in full imitation of the movement of the incarnation and giving of the Son of God. This way of presence and simplicity, of knowledge and of dialogue of life, is the true path of mission, not self-exhibition in the contraposition of identities, but self-giving to the point of martyrdom of those who, day and night, enjoy and amid tribulations, worship Jesus alone as Lord. There will be no shortage, as is customary, of dialogues between Catholics of various sensibilities and with believers of other denominations and non-believers. These are important listening exercises which prepare the new bricks with which to build the future that God already has in store for everyone, but which only unfolds when we welcome one another. We can no longer afford to resist the kingdom of God, which is a kingdom of peace. And where those responsible for state and international institutions seem unable to enforce the rule of law, mediation and dialogue, religious communities and civil society must dare to be prophetic. This means allowing ourselves to be driven into the desert and sing now what can be born from the rubble and from so much, too much innocent suffering. Pope Leo XIV recommended to the Italian bishops that they promote pathways of education in nonviolence, mediation initiatives in local conflicts, and welcoming projects that transform fear of the other into an opportunity for encounter. He goes on to ask that every community become a house of peace, where one learns how to diffuse hostility through dialogue, where justice is practiced and forgiveness is cherished. Peace is not a spiritual utopia. It is a humble path made up of daily gestures that interweave patience and courage, listening and action, and which demands today, more than ever, our vigilant and generative presence. The Holy Father, therefore, encourages us to give a name and shape to the new, so that faith, hope, and charity may be translated into great cultural conversion. Beloved Pope Francis taught us that the option for the poor is primarily a theological category rather than a cultural, sociological, political, or philosophical one. Indeed, God chose the humble, the small, the powerless, and from the womb of the Virgin Mary made himself one of them in order to inscribe his story in our story. Authentic realism, then, is that which includes those who have another way of looking at things. They see aspects of reality that are invisible to the centers of power where weighted decisions are made. Without the victims of history, without those who hunger and thirst for justice, without migrants and refugees, without the cry of all creation, without the young and old, without the cry of all creation, we will not have new bricks. We will continue to follow the delirious dream of Babel, deluding ourselves that touching the sky and making a name for ourselves is the only human way of inhabiting the earth. However, from the outset, denying the voices of others and giving up on understanding one another are failed and dehumanizing experiences. They must be opposed by the patience of encountering an ever other mystery, of which the difference of each person is a sign. Unarmed and disarming, the presence of Christians in contemporary societies must translate with skill and imagination the gospel of the kingdom into forms of development that provide alternatives to paths of growth without equity and sustainability. In order to serve the living God, we must abandon the idolatry of profit, which has severely compromised justice, freedom of encounter and exchange, the participation of all in the common good, and ultimately peace. a faith that is estranged from the desertification of the world, or that indirectly contributes to tolerating it, would no longer be following Jesus Christ. The ongoing digital revolution risks accentuating discrimination and conflict. It must therefore be inhabited with the creativity of those who, obeying the Holy Spirit, are no longer slaves but children. Then the desert becomes a garden, and the city of God, foretold by the saints, transfigures our desolate places. Pope Leo invokes the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the morning star, to support the commitment of each person in communion with the pastors and the ecclesial communities to which they belong. In cooperation with all the other members of the body of Christ, all of us will then work together harmoniously as one. The challenges facing humanity will be less frightening, the future will be less dark, and discernment will be less complicated, if together we obey the Holy Spirit. As I wholeheartedly add my personal good wishes to those of the Holy Father, I avail myself of the circumstance to confer my distinguished respect to your Reverend Excellency. Yours faithfully, Pietro Cardinal Pagolin, Secretary of State. I want to thank the Holy Father on our behalf, on behalf of us all, for this message. With gratitude, we have welcomed the invitation of the Holy Father to live this day fasting and praying, hoping that the Lord will give us peace and justice, so drying the tears of those suffering because of the wars that are underway. That is why I would like to ask you to pray together the prayer for peace composed by the Patriarch of Jerusalem of the Latins, so Patriarch and Bishop Pizzaballa, so inviting everybody to join this gesture with one's own prayer or with a moment of silence. So we can stand up. Thank you. Lord our God, Father of the Lord Jesus Christ, and Father of all humanity, who through the cross of your Son and through the gift of his life wanted to destroy the wall of enmity and hostility that separates peoples and makes us enemies. Send into our hearts the gift of the Holy Spirit, that he may purify us from every feeling of violence, hatred, and revenge, enlightening us to understand the irrepressible dignity of every human person, and inflaming us to the point of consuming ourselves for a world at peace and reconciled in truth and justice, in love and freedom. Almighty and eternal God, in your hands are the hopes of men and the rights of every people. Assist with your wisdom those who govern us, so that with your help they may become sensitive to the sufferings of the poor and of those who suffer the consequences of violence and war. Grant that they may promote in our region and throughout the world the common good and lasting peace. Virgin Mary, Mother of Hope, obtain the gift of peace for the Holy Land that gave you birth and for the whole world. Amen. Thank you. Also this year, the President of the Republic, Sergio Mattarella, honored us with his message. The meeting continues its history by offering new opportunities for encounter, reflection, friendship, and culture. It is an event that has taken root in Italian society and still aims to broaden the space for dialogue, to dig beneath the surface of our times in order to understand how individuals and communities can remain protagonists in times of change. I would like to begin by extending my warmest greetings to the organizers, volunteers, and young people committed to the success of the meeting, as well as to those who will be attending as guests. The title chosen for this 46th edition is "In the Vacant Places We Will Build with New Bricks." It's a quote that is also a challenge, as is traditional for the Rimini Days. We need community builders, builders of coexistence, peace, participation, and solidarity, builders of a society capable of governing change while remaining human in its foundations and civilization. We cannot take for granted that the achievements that previous generations have handed down to us, freedom, democracy, peace, and the social model, must be continually regenerated in accordance with their underlying values, regenerating them and sharing them. The extraordinary powers and opportunities that science and technology offer us are not enough to guarantee a secure and authentic progress. The times we live in are also marked by the horrors of wars we thought we had consigned to history. They are marked by desire for power that is rearing its ugly head once again, by personal and group selfishness, by pressures to conform, by discrimination, poverty, and loneliness. We must not allow ourselves to be overcome by complexity and fear. Communities decline where disengagement or indifference prevail. Building means setting out once again on the path of history, even if this requires crossing difficult terrain. Demographic decline has reduced the presence of young people in society, but no society that wants to have a future can do without the contribution of young people and their new bricks. Changing seasons require new strength, ideas, and energy. It is not true that this risks dispersing values. In this way, the deepest values can be transmitted and bear new fruit. Building means having hope. Hope is the most precious nourishment for a society. It spreads only through friendship and solidarity. This is also my most heartfelt wish for the meeting that is about to begin. Sergio Mattarella. So let's start this meeting with a debate with Layla al-Sheik, Muslim mother from Bethlehem, who lost a very young child during the Second Intifada, with Elana Kaminka, Israeli and mother of a son killed on October the 7th, 2023. And they would have had all reasons to be closed in resentment and the logic of revenge. Instead, they opened up to find a new way towards reconciliation. That is something that has not to be taken for granted. We will also meet Sister Azezet Kidane, a Comboni nun who could have chosen a much comfortable life, but instead is being there where people are suffering in Palestinian territories. Alessandra Buzzetti, a correspondent of TV 2000 in the Holy Land, to moderate this meeting. Thank you very much for coming, and please join us on stage.
Elana, stay here, right? Here, Elana, tu vas là. This is the one for translation, right?
Questo incontro.
And this meeting is a symbol for the message that we want to launch to everybody. And first of all, the message that we want to give ourselves. I would like, before giving the floor to our guests, express our sharing of the appeals sent by Pope Leo XIV to the Israeli government in order to allow, without restrictions, the humanitarian aid to the extremely suffering people, civilian people in Gaza, and also the appeal sent to Hamas to free all the hostages. I want to add that faced with all the military wars that unfortunately are still underway in many parts of the world, the meeting for friendship among peoples have always refused to identify a people with the decision of their governments, especially when such an attitude generates attacks on civilian population. We hope that this meeting will show once again that the peace is possible and can arise from the peoples themselves when you give space to reconciliation and mutual welcoming. Thank you, and thank you very much for coming.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And as Bernhard Scholz said, the deserts, so the vacant places that of the Holy Land seem to be immense. And this has become very evident in the last 2 years. They have many terrible names of violence, of ethnic cleansing, of misunderstanding, of tearing apart at all levels between Israelis and Palestinians, but also within their respective societies. So this is something that we see every day. It is a war that, is escalating continuously. And at present, there seems not to be, possibilities of solution. We want to go through these deserts, through the experiences of 3 women, and I thank you very much for being here. I'm very happy to have these 3 women with us, and they have become also friends. They are very courageous women because deciding to embrace the pathway, a pathway that is different from hatred and revenge, is a difficult choice. As Pope Leo said, you need to be very humble but also very courageous, and their determination and courage starts from their personal experience of loss. Elana Kaminka, Israeli, Jewish, mother of 4 children, lost her son Yannai, an officer, 21 years old, on October the 7th in a military base on the border to Gaza. He had saved 80 refugees and 20 civilians before being killed by the terrorists of Hamas. And then Layla al-Sheik, the mother of 5 children. She lives in Batir, a village close to Bethlehem. Her second son, almost the same age of Yannai, died 22 years ago when he was just 6 months old because in the village there had been clashes during the Second Intifada with the Israeli army, and he got sick because of the tear gas, and it was blocked 4 hours at the checkpoint, and so he couldn't make it to the hospital, and he died in her arms. And then Sister Azezet Kidane, known as Sister Aziza, a Comboni missionary who has lived for 12 years in the Holy Land, and she's there with the vulnerables. And she has spent almost her life in countries that are stages of war. Thank you very much for being with us, and also for the path that you have embraced with a lot of courage and determination. Elana, I start with you, and I would like to quote a poem that struck me very much, that your husband, Eyal, who is here with us listening, wrote for your son, Yannai, 1 year before he died. And while he was going through a difficult period in his life, he said, the cold will envelop us and we will hold each other tight, but we must remember that only at night we can see the stars. So you could certainly not have imagined what a terrible night would your family have to face, but also your country. And Yannai was killed on October the 7th, and 2 months after his death, when Israel was still shocked by Hamas attack, you wrote on a very important Israeli newspaper these words: we are all hurting, all of us. And when we hurt and when we suffer, we delude ourselves that force and violence will bring good to someone, that they will help us get out of this mess. It is not true. We know that the loss of a child it will never heal in a mother's heart. But you said immediately, publicly, 2 months after, you were a voice in the desert saying out loud to your country those words. So after 2 years, are you still convinced of those words? And how the memory of Yannai for you, and there's also an occasion for you to invite to dialogue, remains a star in this very long night?
So Yannai was my son, but he was also my teacher. And he was very young. He hadn't reached his 21st birthday when we lost him. But he still had very strong ideas about leadership. He was a deep thinker. And he thought a lot about what it meant to be a leader and what it meant to create change in society. Some of the things he told us we heard about before his death, but after his death we found a document that he wrote when he was in officer's training in his mandatory military service. He was asked to write his values as a leader. And he wrote the first two: loving the people you're in charge of and making them feel loved. That if you love the people that you're leading, you'll be able to lead them better and to create more change and to have more of an impact. And the second value he wrote was responsibility. I took Yannai's example in everything that I do. He had so much more to give the world that he didn't have the chance to do it. So I feel like I'm working in his name. And Yannai also understood something that I think many people who are older than he is don't understand: that words are empty if there's no action that stands behind them. After he was killed, I felt like I'd lost control over everything in my life. Your main job as a parent is to protect your children, to keep them safe, and I wasn't able to do that. And I saw horrible images after October 7th of people being kidnapped, people being killed, young children being taken hostage. And I felt this total lack of control. And the only thing that I could control is how I'm going to behave, how I'm going to respond to the situation. And I took Yannai's example and I said it has to be my responsibility. You don't create change by putting the responsibility on somebody else. And you don't create peace through violence. And you have to do those things, not only speak about them. And that led me to join the Parents Circle. It led me to meet my friend, Layla. And to do and demonstrate the things that I believe in. And I continue Yannai's example of what leadership can and should be.
Grazie Elana, grazie davvero.
Thank you very much, Elana. Layla, your son Qusay was 6 months old when died in your arms and in a checkpoint close to Hebron. It was your second son, and you told me that it took you 16 years to be able to look into your deep wound. What happened? I mean, how did you manage to start this path of healing, even though a mother's heart will never heal from the loss of a child?
After 16 years, I met one of my friends that I didn't saw for a long time. So he started to talk to me about the parent circle and how he joined them. And he started to explain the program that they have, and I stopped him. I say, how could you ask me to be part of this organization? And you know that I lost my son because of the Israelis. And he said to me, I want to ask you a question. Why until now you didn't tell your other children about what happened to their brother? I said, because I didn't want them to be part of this cycle of violence, because maybe if they know, they'll start to think to take revenge. And I'm not ready to lose another one. I lost one of them, and that was much more than enough for me. So he said to me, so maybe this will be a good chance for you, not just to protect your children, maybe other families, other people. To be honest, in the beginning, I didn't care about what he said. I thought he's crazy, because my whole life I didn't hear about this kind of organization. He kept calling me, and one day he invited me to a conference in Bethlehem. When we arrived, there were just Palestinians. We sat, we talked. 5 minutes later, when the Israeli tried to enter that room, I felt something act in my chest. I don't want to be with them in the same room. I tried to leave. Then he just convinced me to sit. Since we were arguing about that, I saw something amazed me when I saw the Palestinian, the Israeli hug each other, talk to each other, laugh with each other. And that was the first time I saw something like that. And I said to myself, you should just sit to listen, to know what's the thing that makes them so close to each other like that. To hear the Israelis spoke about how they lost their beloved ones, that was touched my heart, because that was the first time I looked at them as a human like me. The first time I felt we share the same tears, we share the same pain, even if we had different circumstances, but we're still human. And nothing worse than losing a child or a family member. And no one could understand that pain unless someone be in the same situation. So from that day, I decided to be a member of the forum, start to give lectures on Israel, Palestine, even travel around the world to spread the message of peace and reconciliation.
Grazie Layla.
Thank you, Layla. And you said that for the first time, you said you saw Israelis as human beings, as being human, because the dehumanization is a big damage of this war, because, the enemy, is not seen anymore as a human being. And you both said why you decided to join Parent Circle, this organization that works with a lot of courage and in spite of many difficulties to make the families of victims meet, and tries also to do that with young people, especially with young Palestinians. But young Palestinians cannot meet young Israelis inside their territories, because they could, be object of consequences. So we would like to show you the testimony of a young boy. He's 28 years old. His name is Odit. I met him in Jenin. Jenin is a city, is a historic stronghold of Palestinians. And over the last few months, there was a very heavy mission of the Israeli army, because 23,000 refugees were displaced, and one of Odit's friend was killed by an Israeli bomb, and is a friend that had joined one of these summer camps. For the very first time, they had both met, young people of the same age from Israel. So let's listen to his testimony, and you will understand also why he didn't want to be, seen in his face. But let's listen Odit's words. I have lost 7 family members in this conflict, some of them after October the 7th. Last February, my friend Tamam was also killed. He was a nurse in Nablus, but he had volunteered as a first responder here in Jenin as well. During the Israeli army's siege of the refugee camp, Tamam received news that his cousin had been shot and needed help. He was a nurse and tried to reach him on his motorbike, but an Israeli missile targeted him and hit him and killed him. He had no connection to the armed resistance. He loved life and loved peace. He was like a brother to me and a companion on the path to reconciliation. Last summer, we took part in a summer camp in Switzerland for young peace ambassadors. We shared wonderful moments with the other children. After Tamam was killed, my heart rebelled. It was far from the path of reconciliation we had traveled together. But then I thought a lot about it for a long time and realized that the desire for peace was even stronger within me. I don't want to lose any more relatives, any more friends. I don't want to see any more deaths. The solution lies only in dialogue, in being able to meet and get to know the other side. It takes a lot of sacrifice to do it because each of us has to give up something of ourselves. But it is very difficult for me even to talk about this in Jenin. 23,000 people have been displaced from the refugee camp. Many families have suffered trauma and violence at the hands of the occupying army. Meeting Israelis is not considered as appropriate. I can do it abroad, but not here. Anyone who talks about peace and calls for dialogue is seen by Palestinians as a normalizer, as someone who sides with the Israelis against the Palestinians. If I do that, I also run the risk of being arrested by the Palestinian authorities. So, Layla, we just heard all this experience and how difficult it is for a young Palestinian, and especially for you Palestinians, to embrace the pathway that you have embraced with a lot of courage. And after 2 years of war, even more so after more than 60,000 deaths in Gaza, and the difficult situation in Gaza, also where you live, where there is continuous violence perpetrated by extremist settlers. You live in Batir, that is literally surrounded by Israeli settlements that, according to the international law, are illegal. So why is it so difficult at all levels, even to talk, to try to embrace this pathway inside society? You told me that your oldest daughter, the only one who remember his little brother, was very angry with you for what you started to do with Parent Circle.
When she knew that I became a member in the organization, she was angry. She asked me many times to quit from the organization. And that was even hard for me to explain to her how much that's important for me. Because we're still under occupation. Even after the 7th of October, our life become much harder. One of the things that all the people who lost their all the people who work inside Israel, they lost their jobs. So the economic situation become in the lowest point. We don't have shelters. There's many rockets fell down in the West Bank. We don't know if it's from Hamas, if it's from Hezbollah, from Yemen, or even from the Israeli Iron Dome, because these kind of rockets will never recognize if you are Palestinian or Israeli. And one of the difficulties that the children couldn't go to school. If they are lucky enough, they could go for 1 day. And one of the difficulties, even, which happened after the 7th of October, that the Israeli government put a gate in front of every city, in front of every village. In my village, there's 3 gates. And this gate is much different than the checkpoint. So the checkpoint, you could have a soldier, you could talk to him, sometimes you could convince him, and he could let you through. But in this gate, you don't know when they open it, you don't know when they close it, and even if you have an urgent case, you can't cross it. So all of these things let the people feel much more angry, much more sad about that. And my daughter, because she's the oldest, she knows the whole story about her brother, and she loves him so much, and she missed him. She feels like I betrayed her, and this is kind of normalization. So we have, every year we have a ceremony called, help me with that.
A Memorial Day.
The Memorial Day. So in that day, we as a Palestinian Israeli gather together to remember our beloved ones who've been died during the conflict, and to send a message to all people around the world of we are the people who suffered daily from this occupation, could stand side by side and put our effort together to make a change, everything will be possible. So we have 4 speakers, 2 Palestinian, 2 Israelis, and I was one of the speakers. So when I returned back, that was even online, so my children saw that. So I was really terrified to return back because I don't know how their reaction will be. But then my oldest daughter came to me and she said, now I just understand why you are doing this, and I'm so proud of you. And she came and hugged me. Both of us started to cry. And that was the most important point in my whole journey, because if my children could understand what I'm doing, I think everything will be easier for me.
Ecco Elana, tu vivi...
Elana, you live in Israel, and we know that there is, let's say, there's a greater freedom of expression where you live. We have seen many protests against the war and the government over the last 2 years. We saw, for instance, Israeli people holding the pictures of young Gaza children that died because of the hunger. We know that these military operations go on. Another 60,000 reservists say that they don't want to keep fighting. And there have been suicides among these young soldiers, and 7 in July alone. And so society is devastated. There's a deep divide, a deep rift. People like you are a minority. But how did you try to go beyond the barriers inside your own society, the society you live in, and also inside your family? I don't know. Maybe you have encountered barriers, because the very first dialogue was with your husband and with your other children.
So I think it's important to understand that a lot of what influences people is fear. That's also true for our family. A few days after October 7th, my 16-year-old daughter, she climbed in our bed and she said, Mom, Dad, what do we do if Hamas comes in our house? Where do we hide? Where do we go? And there's such a level of fear in both societies, but for sure, I feel it in Israeli society that motivates people to behave in an irrational way. And so one of the things that I think is important is to address the source of people's behavior, which is the fear. And it's not easy, because things are scary. Like you mentioned, rockets are falling. People saw horrible things happen on October 7th. And of course, for Palestinians, also horrible things have happened to them in the past 22 months. I think, first of all, it's important to acknowledge the fear and to understand what creates it, and then to give people an example of, again, not through words, but through actions, of showing that it is possible to meet Palestinians, to work with Palestinians. And yes, it is easier for Israelis because we have a lot of threats to our democracy, but we still have freedom of expression and we can express our views in public. I try to do that as much as possible, but mostly to give the personal example of being in connection with Palestinians and bringing back the humanity. You mentioned before that dehumanization is a huge problem on both sides. And I think that once we meet one another and we show that it's possible to meet and that there's a human being sitting on the other side, that already can create enormous change in both societies.
Grazie, Elana.
Thank you, Lana. So, Sister Aziza lived 14 years in Holy Land, and you were born in Eritrea. Today you're a British citizen. What struck me of you the most, seeing you in action, is that you have worked with everybody, with Israelis, with Palestinians, with Jews, Muslims, Christians, and with Bedouins. And the Bedouins living in the sea area of the Palestinian Territories, the poorest of the poorest, the most vulnerable ones. You can see this picture. This is a Bedouin village that, was forced to be emptied because of the continuous violence by extremists. So the village was abandoned. And maybe it's because you are a foreigner and you're a woman and you are a religious person. You told me that this helped you a lot to build bridges that can result from listening to the other, from the embrace with the other. Can you tell us what all this meant to you and why women and mothers from all sides in the Holy Land, in your opinion, can play such an important role from the bottom up to start these reconciliation pathways that seem, not so important, but instead they can make history?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me here. And I'm here working with these two peoples and with these two women who are brave enough to come and bring testimony together. Many people are suffering like them, but they don't say that. And the courage of these women is wonderful. And Alessandra Buzzetti, thank you for inviting us here. And we want to give a big round of applause to Alessandra for inviting us, because this has been very important. We really need many of these events so that we can break down these walls separating peoples. We, as Comboni sisters, are working in the Middle East and worldwide. We like working. Our target is to be bridges among peoples. Wherever we go, we create bridges, and we always ask someone to do something for the most vulnerable. And the people who were understanding the most vulnerable were the rabbis for human rights. And they told us the most vulnerable, the people in need, who have no water, who have no food, who have no house, the people really in need are the Bedouins in the desert of Judah. And we, with the rabbis for human rights, went to ask them, what do you need? And they told us, well, actually, we need two things. Our children do not have a future because they are Bedouins with animals and they have no future prospects. We have no land, we have no water, we need education for our children, and then we need health care, they said. And we worked a lot with our Bedouins for that. We just didn't work for education. We realized that they needed to meet others because they were separated from others. And I was struck when a Bedouin, Abu Sinaiman, said, this wall is separating us and is preventing us from seeing the face of others, to see the beauty of others. We are afraid of them and they are afraid of us. Why? Why is it so? And that was 14 years ago. And every year, this separation becomes stronger and stronger. In my experience, in our experience as Comboni sisters, we have seen hundreds of organizations fighting and doing their best so that these two peoples can meet. There were doctors for human rights that were working for that. Every Saturday, Muslims, Israelis, and Palestinians went to the West Bank together to listen, to see, to listen to people, to do something for those people who cannot enjoy the same rights, who are suffering, who are alone. And to them, that was a way to see the face of others. There was a boy saying, it's true, people cannot meet, and there are many biases. And there are women of Al-Bahar, there are 4 women that every year brings thousands of Palestinians to the sea, because there are many volunteers doing that and helping Palestinians to see the sea. It's a 1-hour journey, but there were women 60 years old who had never seen the sea before because they cannot see the sea. Comboni sisters have always been working for that. And there are many fighters for peace. There were many Palestinians who were in jail. There were many Israeli soldiers who are fighting and who are saying that with violence and with war there is no hope. So we have to make the difference. We came up with the Fighters for Peace. So we worked with them so that people could meet and could see the face of others. And when you can see the face of another one, you can see God. And you can see that the other one is also suffering. You don't get closed in your own suffering. You can understand that the other one is just like you.
Grazie, Sister Aziza.
Thank you, Sister Aziza. And now we're going to see a map that we prepared. I'm going to show you where Elana and Layla live. In kilometers, it's 2.5 kilometers. Elana lives in an Israeli village on the barrier, and Layla lives in Batir. Elana is brave enough, but she's able to cross that wall. To Layla, it is even more difficult. So even during these 2 years of war, you went to meet Layla in Bejala, near Bethlehem. But your knowledge of the Palestinians started well before that. So your pathway started before that, before the 7th of October, before the death of your son. And you said that you saw the Star of Peace for the first time in the eyes of a Palestinian, Yaqub Arabi, that you met in his village after his wife was killed by a Jewish settler, an extremist Jewish settler. And he didn't harbor any resentment. So why? How is it possible, if it is possible, to forgive the people who killed your son? And at the same time, how is it possible to continue asking for truth and justice in this conflict? We also know that you, like many other mothers and like the family members of the hostages, there are still 53 inside the Gaza Strip, there have been no investigation yet on the massacre. So what does it mean for you to forgive? Can you forgive? And what does it mean for you to continue asking for truth and justice?
So I think that we're sitting here as mothers, and mothers maybe are different than politicians because we're very practical. And I look at things in a very practical way. You can see this map, and Layla is my neighbor. And if someone is your neighbor and you're a terrible neighbor to them, you're going to have a miserable life yourself. If you want to have a good life, you have to be a good neighbor. And Israel and Palestine is a small land. There are 7 million Palestinians and 7 million Israelis living in the same land, and nobody's going anywhere. No one's going anywhere. The most extreme elements of both of our societies have a delusion that one side is going to suddenly disappear like magic. It's not going to happen. We have to learn how to live together. We're that close. We have no choice. And it'll happen eventually because there's no other option. The question is just how many children of our own children, Qusay, Yannai, how many of our children are going to be lost before we learn how to live together? And as far as I'm concerned, one child, Palestinian, Israeli, it doesn't matter, it's too much. I mentioned before that Yannai believed in leading through example, and as Alessandra mentioned, I really received a gift, an amazing example in 2018. When I came to visit Yaqub in his village, I didn't know what to expect. His dear wife, Aisha, had been killed by an extreme member of my society 2 weeks earlier, and we showed up at his house, a group of Israeli Jews. Some even had a yarmulke, a kippah on their head, and I didn't know what he would feel, what he would think about us coming. And he is a person that has the kindest eyes in the world. And he opened his house, and he opened his arms, and he opened his heart, and he welcomed us in. He didn't blame me for killing Aisha. He knew that I wasn't the person who did it, and he didn't fall into the trap of making generalizations. And he gave me the example. The people who crossed the border on October 7th and committed crimes, they did things that I'm against, but Layla didn't commit these crimes. So why should I blame her for any of those things that happened? And I think those kind of generalizations are so dangerous. And some people are confused. They think you can make the generalizations about the other side, but be very indignant when the generalizations are made about you. It doesn't work that way. I don't blame Layla for what happened on October 7th. I know she wasn't involved, and I don't blame the majority of Palestinians for it because the majority weren't involved. And I also don't accept that some people attack Israelis, attack me because of things that somebody like Ben Gvir or Smotrich or even Netanyahu say that don't represent me, they don't represent my ideas, they don't represent my values. And I think we all have to put aside those generalizations, look at the human beings, and find practical solutions to learn to live together. And it's urgent because any day we put it off, it means losing another child.
Layla, I'm going to ask you the same question. Is it possible to you to forgive and at the same time to continue to fight for justice and the dignity of your people that we know now is suffering a lot?
I will tell you a short story about forgiveness. 4 years ago, I've been in Jerusalem in a meeting with other people from other organizations. So after I spoke about my story, there's a man, an Israeli man, who's sit there and he's crying. And I know there's something about him, but I didn't understand why he cried that much. I know him like many years ago, but when he stand up and he started to talk about his personal story, that was the first time I listened to him. And he was mentioned that he was a high officer in the army, and he served in my area. And then he said that he prevented a Palestinian car which have sick children from going to a hospital. Then it's become hard for me to listen to him because he did the same things that the Israeli soldiers did to my child. And in my whole life, I didn't think that I will meet one of those soldiers, and to be him in front of me, that was even so hard for me to accept his word. I didn't know what to do, what to say. Then I started to cry. One of our friends asked us, both of us, to go outside the room, start to talk about what happened. Then he said to me, I know this is hard for you, Layla, but this is so important for me to tell you that part of my story. And then he mentioned that after time, his son becomes sick. And when he tried to take him to a hospital, the guard stopped him because he wanted to ask him a few questions. He was in a hurry. Then he said to me, then I realized what I did to the Palestinian. He quit from the army. He refused to serve again. And because of that, they sent him to jail. When he released, he established a new organization called Combatant for Peace with ex-Palestinian prisoners to end the occupation, to start to work in the ground. So I looked at him and I said, look, Khen, his name is Khen Alon. This is so hard for me to listen to your story. But at the same time, I want to thank you because you didn't hide that part of your story. And thank you because you have that courage and honesty to speak in front of me. And now I could forgive you. Then I realized it's so easy to speak about love, peace, reconciliation. But sometimes we ask ourselves if we meant every word we say or everything that we did. And that day I realized I made everything right. And everything I did, it was perfect. And that even gave me a power to continue, even in these dark times that we have now.
Sister Aziza, thank you very much, Layla. Thank you very much to all of you. Sister Aziza, during your mission in the Holy Land, you saw this miracle of forgiveness and what it meant for you, Christian, to work with Muslims and with Jews. And also, you have this Christian cross tattooed on your forehead. What was the meaning for you? What did it mean for you to see this miracle happen as a Christian? Well, when we started working with the Bedouins, the first time, there was a summer camp, and the rabbis for human rights promised us, well, if you're going to start the summer camp, we want to bring Israelis. It was the first time, together with Alicia, that we started this summer camp. We also had the Spanish volunteers, and we had these Israelis on board with us. The children, the Bedouins, were insulting each other, saying, Jews are bad. Jews cannot be controlled. We are against the Jews, they were saying. And when I heard that, when I heard the child saying that, I said, shame on you. But they are Jews. But they accepted that the other ones were Jews because they they think about Jews as a people wearing masks. To them, Israelis were ghosts coming at night to destroy their lives. And they couldn't believe that they were Jews. But we were saying, no, they are Jews. To me, forgiving is not easy. Reconciliation is not, and healing is not easy, but it is possible, only through the grace of God. In Sudan and in many other places, I saw the scars. I saw the scars that can only lead to the destruction of mankind. Forgiveness is a grace, and you can and have to accept the weaknesses of others. Only by accepting the weaknesses of others, you can reach reconciliation and peace that we need every day, even with our families. Because if we don't want to have peace, if we don't want to have reconciliation with others, there can be no peace in ourselves. I've seen a lot of suffering. But if you're not open, then you cannot forgive others, and you cannot forgive the people who have been hurting you. So you can see others and forgive others by looking at others and seeing the face of God. Reconciliation means acceptance. This is the only hope we have. This is the only way to carry on, to go on, and to accept others who are human beings that have been created by God. This is the only way to forgive and to work hand in hand together. My Israeli and Palestinian friends tell me, Aziza, you as Christians have this sense, this idea of forgiveness. Pray for me, pray for us. Pray so that I can feel forgiveness in me, to forgive my enemies, the people I don't know, the people I cannot see, but the people that I hate. So there is a strong desire to forgive, to recognize others, and to walk hand in hand together in peace. Peace, which is a treasure. Aziza, it's a question, but the cross that you have on your forehead has never been a problem for you. Has it ever been a problem for you in the Muslim villages or with the Israeli Jews? Well, I forget that I have this cross on my forehead always. So it's the children usually telling me you have a cross on your forehead. I went to Sudan. I went to different Muslim countries. I went to Dubai. I went to Israel, Palestine. Well, actually, this cross is a way for me to start talking about my faith, my path, my beauty, and my richness. It's a tool for me. In my country, we used to have this cross, but this now is a tool for evangelization. I went to synagogues, to mosques. I went to the Knesset many times, and nobody told me, no, you cannot get in. This means that I am a testimony. My mother didn't want me to have this cross, but now this is a way for me to bear testimony of God. Yeah, you think it's easy. You say it's easy, but it's not very easy in many difficult contexts. But you are very empathic to others. You are not judgmental. Right now, we are crossing deserts in Israel and Palestine. And there is also a desert of God. Coming from what? Coming from the fact that it's the most extremist parts that are leading what is happening, that prevent any possible realistic solution that can lead to peaceful coexistence. Because we see the two extreme sides, Muslim and Jewish, Hamas and the groups choosing to fight, choosing the killing, choosing to kill the enemy. And they say that the Holy Land is their own, is just their own. On the other side, we see the most extremist sides, especially the Messianic people saying the same thing, saying that the Bible says that from the river to the sea, this is their own land. I want to ask you, Layla, you are Muslim. You immediately condemned what Hamas did on the 7th of October. You also said that after the death of your son, for many years, you had a crisis of faith. So let me ask you, why did you condemn Hamas? You condemned the mass actually because you said this is not Islam, this is not what you believe in. And you are Muslim. What is the meaning of being a Muslim to you, especially in this pathway of reconciliation?
I think all religion comes from God. It speaks about peace. Like in Islam, the first thing you say when you meet anyone, you said, Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum means peace be upon you. Even in Judaism, they said shalom. Shalom, it means peace too. So God is a love and a peace. He didn't talk about killing. Even if in Islam, if there's a war and there's people who fight and killing each other, and Islam said you can't kill a child, you can't kill a woman, you can't even kill an animal or cut a tree. But unfortunately, some people try to explain the religion as they want to. I can't find the word to express. Yes. To just justify what they are doing. It's not about religion. Even in Judaism, in Christianity, they try to do the same things. It's not about Islam. Islam is talking about love, to be, to have peace with your neighbor, even to love your neighbor as yourself. But unfortunately, many religious who take benefit from what they're talking about, they try to destroy the religion, but the way that they try to talk. Even I was a struggle after the death of my son, because one person said to me that God punish you because you are not religious enough and he take your son. And that was so hard for me, because I think if really God do that to me, so where is the mercy that they are talking about? So I lost my faith in God for many years. Then one day I started to think about that, and I realized the problem is not with God, the problem with people who try to explain things by the way that they think, not because of what God really said.
Grazie, Layla.
Thank you, Layla. Thank you, Layla, for the courage you have in explaining many things, starting always from your own personal experience. Elana. In Israel, there are not messianic extremists, and we have seen that there were 80 rabbis in the past few days that wrote an appeal to the Israeli government to stop hunger in Gaza and to stop this massacre. When we met the first time in your own house in Israel, you told me that what the Israeli government is now doing is somewhat a betrayal of Judaism. Why? Why so?
So I think any religion, and it doesn't matter which religion you're talking about, can be used for good purposes and for bad purposes. Christianity was used in the past to justify the Inquisition, and it's used for the wonderful work that people like Sister Aziza are doing, and that's an example, and the same is true for Islam and for Judaism. I believe that Judaism, the key thing that Judaism brought to the world was a set of values. And those values, even though among Jews we have different practices and we have different observance, but those values to me were always core values. And the strongest one is life, the value of life, that life is something that can't be sacrificed. And I think that this government has shown again and again a lack of respect for life, whether it's respect for life of the Palestinians that are being killed in Gaza, whether it's the respect for life of the Israeli hostages by refusing to make a deal and letting them to continue to suffer, whether it's the lives of the soldiers that are being killed. So many lives are being treated callously, and in my mind, that is the betrayal of Judaism, because if you read Jewish texts, life is always the highest value, and distorting that value shows that the people who are leading us now really don't understand what the key elements of Judaism are.
Ecco, prima di
Now, before one last question to Sister Aziza, to both of you, starting from Layla. Now, for the past 2 years, we have seen a war with no end. Are you worried? Are you worried for your children and for younger generations? Are you worried that these radical parties can influence more and more young generations? Do you feel that extremists can influence younger generations? Because we know that the youth will be the ones that will pay the highest price. So, Layla, are you worried that this distortion of Islam can get more consensus among the youth in Palestine?
So I'm worried and I'm afraid because people felt of hatred and anger since the 7th of October, and it's increased because many, even Palestinians who live in the West Bank or who live inside Israel, they have relatives in Gaza. Like my children at the beginning of the war, especially my youngest daughter, at that time she was 8 years old. She always afraid, she always cried, she didn't go to bed. She just wants me all the time beside her, she's scared. And after the 7th of October, after 2 days, one of my Israeli friends called me. She tried to ask about the situation about my children. And then my youngest daughter asked me, so she care about me? I said, yeah, of course. She said, so she didn't want me to die? I said, of course not. She loves you. She asked about you, about your brothers. And I said to her, not all the Israeli hate the Palestinian. As Palestinian, not all of them hate the Israeli and wish them to die. And we learn how to love each other. We should learn how to live side by side. As a Palestinian, we will never leave that country. As Israeli, they will never leave this country. So we should learn how to do that. So I think she started to think about that. It's depend about the family, how they could talk to their children. I know there's many people who are angry, who are sad, and they could teach their children to take revenge. But this is what we make us in the organization try to educate children and the new generation, because violence will never bring peace. Violence will bring much more violence. And this is not what we want for them. We want peace for them. We want a better life for them, for their children, for the generation will come after them. We don't want them to say they didn't do nothing. They just sit side and wait. We can't wait. We should do something. As mothers, we believe that we have a power and courage to do something. We will never wait our leaders to do something, because we wait them for 77 years and they made our life much more miserable. They don't do anything.
Elana, I'm asking you the same question. Are you worried for the younger generations of Israelis? The people who are living this war, people who are going to the military service, are between 18 and 21 years of age, and so there will be many consequences for their future life.
Of course, 6 weeks after Yannai was killed, my second son, Liam, was drafted into the army, and he's still serving. So there's no way I cannot be worried, and there's no way I cannot be terrified when I see the media and all the propaganda that's given to young people. What I think is important to remember is that the extremists are always very loud. They get a lot more press and a lot more media than their actual proportion in society. And sometimes for the rest of us, it's a bit difficult because we're not the kind of people who like to put ourselves out there. I know, at least about myself, I don't necessarily feel comfortable speaking out loud and expressing my experiences, and certainly not on TikTok or Instagram or all those things that it's not a comfortable arena for me. But if we don't speak, then the only ones that are heard are the extremist voices, and the only voices that the young generation hears are those extremist voices. So we have to find the motivation to make our voices heard as well, and give them a different perspective that they can see for their own future. So that's one level. And I think young people are a lot smarter than we give them credit for sometimes. And I speak a lot with young people in Israel, all different kinds of frameworks in schools and different organizations. And what I try to teach them or ask them is, what future do you see for yourself, and how can you create that future? We know what will happen from violence. We've seen for the last 77 years, we know exactly what the result will be. And Einstein said that if you do the same thing and you expect a different result, you're kind of stupid. That's exactly what we're doing, is what I tell them. And Israel has been really successful in all kinds of creative endeavors, in high tech, in medicine, in the arts. And the challenge that I give to young people who are really creative by nature is, let's take that creativity and use that creativity and that breadth of thought to make a different solution for the conflict. Because we know what's going to happen if we continue what we're doing now. We know. So let's try something different. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't, but it's worth trying. And I think young people are open to that message. They want to hear it, and they want a different future for themselves as well. And if I can just add that we spoke about generalizations before, and I know a lot of people see an Israeli soldier, like Layla sees an Israeli soldier, and they see something that's threatening and scary, and I understand why they feel that way. But my son, when he was drafted, we spoke about what it meant to serve under a government that we don't agree with. And I asked him to at least think about what he wants to do. That I can't make the decision for him because he's already over 18, but I want him to make his own decision through thought. And he thought about it, and he fought really hard to become a paramedic in his army service. And he said, if I'm serving as a paramedic, my job at least is to care for people. And actually, he's serving in the south of Israel, and one of the main things he does is care for Bedouins who have medical conditions and are living in faraway areas, and he comes with the ambulance to care for them as well. So when we look at Israeli soldiers, yes, many horrible things like what happened to Layla happened, but my son is also serving, and part of what he's doing is helping all the different populations that live in his area get medical care.
Sister Aziza, now let's talk about your relationship with God. All your life, you lived in war areas, and your story seems like a novel. And there are many tears and a lot of bloodshed. And you also talked about it in a book, Oltre i confini, Beyond the Borders. And when you were 30, as a missionary, you went to South Sudan, in Juba, where there was a terrible and bloody war, civil war, where you saw death in the eyes many times, and you saw a lot of pain and suffering. And you said that you had a sort of rebellion against God, a crisis of faith, and that you needed a longer healing for that. So how is it possible? How was it possible for you to heal? And how can your experience be an example for this darkness, and not just in the Holy Land, but in many other areas of the world, even in Italy? When I went to Sudan, I saw many people die. And my first reaction was against God. God, why are you allowing that? Why do you allow man to destroy mankind? And that was a crisis for me, a very strong crisis for me, a crisis of faith. And this crisis also continued when I was in Israel, when I saw houses, the houses of Bedouins be destroyed. And I couldn't do anything for them. But I said, God, why are you allowing all that? And after some time, I went to the Holy Sepulchre to pray because I was really in crisis. And there I saw an Orthodox nun, Miriam, in a corner with her poverty, very simple. She was sitting there and she was praying. She couldn't even see the people. She was all covered. Every time and every night she was there praying. I looked at her, and what helped me, even when you don't know who to pray, even when you doubt about the existence of God, you don't know what God is going to answer you. Prayer is key for that. When in doubt, when in suffering, when you're angry, even against God, just pray. Be constant in your prayers. For me, the prayer was very important both in Juba and Israel. Human beings have to accept their own wounds. You have to give a name to your wound. One of my brothers was killed in Ethiopia, and my mother really suffered a lot for that. And my mother took a pathway to forgive. He was the only male son, the only son that was killed. And I grew up with that, and I saw the Israelis and Palestinians suffering, and I saw people in Sudan killing. But prayer is key. Human beings have to go under the cross and talk about their suffering and continue to believe. Believe in hope, believe in trust, because in the end, God will bring peace under his cross. Otherwise, peace will not be possible. Just as my sisters were saying, without peace, nothing is possible. Nothing can be built. You can only die. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and especially for how you shared your experience, to sharing with us the meaning of being human, showing us what it means to express your own identities, even religiously, and as a possibility to encounter the other, to know the other, and not as a contradiction. So really, a very special thank for being with us and for opening up your hearts to us with so much frankness and authenticity.
E questo è come
And so this is the very beginning of the meeting. Every donation can be a new brick to keep building such encounters of hope. And please do not hesitate to donate in every station with a red heart. And if you support the meeting, you can benefit from tax breaks because we are a third sector entity. The meeting is a third sector entity. Thank you very much again to our guests, Elana, Layla, and Sister Aziza.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
che si impegna, che si batte,
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito, del presente. E tutto questo esiste anche grazie a te.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Di comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'iter communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'iter communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'iter communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Con Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo. Easy Bank, semplicemente banca.
Vi prego, vi imploro, con umiltà e con fiducia, permettete a Cristo di parlare all'uomo.
Don Gius aveva capito il problema che avevo. Se la tua vocazione è vero, il tuo lavoro verrà fuori anche dai sassi.
Di comunicare la fede agli altri, ma veramente insieme a loro riscoprire che cos'è la fede, che cos'è la fede per me. Portare Cristo agli altri, comunicarlo agli altri è l'unico modo che abbiamo per conoscerlo veramente.
L'iter communionis aiuta a comunicare all'esterno la ricchezza di vita, di giudizi, di tentativi, di opere che nascono dalle persone e dalle comunità. L'iter communionis è proprio la vita del movimento. Scrivete all'iter communionis le vostre esperienze, ci fate bene.